Let's do it.
All right. I'm here with Jason Mironchuk. I always say your name wrong. I hope I got it right that
No, you
time.
got it. You
All
got it.
right. I always just stick with 2-bit Jason. It's so much easier for me.
It's which it speaks to like when you pick a show name, right? Like you gotta think now. You have to really think about things, going forward. So like being like not that I mind you calling me anything, Tommy, but because I love you, but at the same time being called 2-bit Jason or being known as 2-bit Jason is sort of like
And
that's why
see what
I started using the last name. So it's
well,
like
and okay, so just why it holds such a dear interest to my heart to call you 2-bit Jason is because The Outsiders was my favorite book and my favorite movie when
right.
I was a kid. So I always think about 2-bit.
Yeah. Well, I was actually going to use that as an avatar at one point, and I just I was like, I thought this is a bit of a reach. I don't know if people are actually going to get this one, but
Yeah, it's a little it's just kind of vague, but not everybody would get it. But for those that did get it would love it.
but for those who do,
so but yeah, that's kind of why I just like, yeah, when like I told Beatrix, I was like, I'm recording with Jason tonight, and she's like, my Jason, and I'm like, yeah, 2-bit, like it's just that's how I refer to you whenever
I
you're
like
not around.
I like how your wife just claims us. Like
Yeah,
it's like
she
Buck's her
claims everybody.
boyfriend.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Matt was her boyfriend for a bit. Now she stepped out. She upscaled from the man made out of hair to a firefighter, and I'm just a love interest on the sides. Like,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
the
if I
dark
record
horse.
with anytime I record with Matt, you're like, she's like my ex-boyfriend, and I'm like, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
glad she respects his marriage. That's nice. It's always good.
Yeah, she waited on Buck to get divorced before she claimed him. So she doesn't respect our marriage as much as she respects theirs, though. Maybe I should be worried.
Well, at least she's
uh,
respectful on some level.
yeah, I mean, she still calls Kurt Cobain her husband, and I have to, compete with that. So,
Girl, if you're competing with a dead heroin junkie, I mean, like, it's, I would give you points, sir,
well,
just for the alive part.
he had a better jawline than me, though.
Not anymore. In pictures. You have
uh,
here's one plus. You have much better dental work than he does.
I have better hair too. His hair was thin and scraggly. My hair is all full.
Luscious.
Yes, I have beautiful hair.
Hmm.
Oh, all right. So we were originally going to read chapter 2 and 3 of Jesus in the Talmud, but
I
I
feel like
think
this
we're
is like an ongoing cycle with us. We get together to
yeah
read
we're
this
just
book,
yeah
and
we
then we
just
were like,
start
and then we're like,
talking. Well, and
let's do
I
this again.
read through those chapters again. I mean, for like the
Hmm.
third time while I was out grilling today because my like I told you my stove's out. So um Beatrix wanted molcajete, which is a Mexican dish. I don't know if you've ever had it. So it's cooked and they like a mortar and pestle, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's made out of stone. It's made out of granite, and they cook all the food in that mortar and pestle. They put it over a fire, and the actual Mexican term for the mortar is on
Oh,
molcajete,
it's like
and
a Korean hot pots are like that too.
kind of like that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't we have a mortar and pestle made out of granite, but it's not real big, and I couldn't cook enough for both of us in the one we have. So I took one of my gumbo pots, and I used
Hmm.
it over the fire, and I made it in that. And so when you go to Facebook, I mean, go to Twitter, and you see in my pictures, I had posted what I was cooking out there on the grill. That's what I was doing, and it's got sausage and beef and shrimp and chicken and cheese, cactus, tomatillo, tomato, like all kinds of stuff. cooked in there.
All the Mexican fruit, right?
Yeah, and it was really good. And I finished that like about an hour ago. Was able to eat and before we got on here. I was supposed to record another episode earlier today, but it just with having to do that, I was like, I can't squeeze it all in. So
Well,
that we just
I'm glad
put
that
that episode.
I made the cut.
Well,
I'm honored to make
we
the cut.
I knew that you and I were going to be recording a little bit later in the day. This one was supposed to go on a little bit earlier, and I was just like, yeah, with me having to do stuff, it just wasn't going to work out properly. So we rescheduled. It's all good, not a problem. And I have a really cool show coming up on Tuesday. I'm recording with Adam Patrick and
Oh, nice.
my buddy
Say
Coop.
hi.
Oh, absolutely. My buddy Coop, who you may have heard. I did an episode with him and Matt Erickson on mythology and the power of myth. And so they're going to be discussing the history of orthodoxy and religion in general. So I'm probably just going to be sitting back, just listening to this Nietzschean talk to Adam Patrick. Really, is what I'm going to be doing. So,
Oh, Jesus.
yeah, it's going to be
Oh,
fun. It's going to be fun. Yeah,
Lord.
yeah.
Lord have mercy.
I got a front row seat. So.
Well,
This is
might
going to
lose
be
a friend. You might lose a friend in this exchange. But
nah, not these
no,
guys. Both these
Adam's
guys are super cool. So
Adam has a reputation, which I think is only somewhat warranted, of being a bit of a mean guy. But
he's a
I think
little
he's just
aggressive on Facebook from what Beatrix has shown me
yeah.
as far as his Facebook posts. But I've had him on with people that he disagreed with and had great conversations. Like when
Look,
I had him on
one
with
of the
Reed Coverdale a couple of years ago when they had their little spat going back and forth, and I brought them both on, and we had a great conversation. It was a lot of fun, and
I remember that. I remember that because I had Adam was the first interview I did on the show when we
mm,
first started the show like 3 years ago, and it was in the middle of all that shit. And I was never a libertarian, but I was trying to be nice to the Reeds and the Clints and all that stuff because I'm like, well, you're not too far off. You're adjacent to kind of positioning, and I wasn't even as far down the DR and everything rabbit hole as I am now. And I had him on the show, and that got me like all this libertarian heat. And that's what really kind of opened my eyes to like, because I always kind of thought libertarianism was a bit stupid, but I was like, whatever, bygones be bygones, and people can believe in silly things. But it was that instant where I was like, oh, wait a minute, like I think you people are more retarded than I actually thought you were. And then I started actually paying attention to some stuff. I'm like, oh, you're really fucking retarded. Like this is stupid. Just like, and then we did the Dave Smith friend or fed, where Dave chimed in and got all those guys in there, and then I got blocked by majority of the accounts, and just for putting Dave Smith friend or fed in the title, just those words combined in a title.
mm.
Set Dave off because Dave was like commenting on it. He hadn't watched the damn thing.
Yeah,
and the first,
I remember when that came out. Yeah, that was
yeah.
right around the first time I had come on. I wasn't on that one, but
No, I think you were on the one or two after that. Yeah,
I think
I think that's
I think I was on
yeah.
the one before that because that's the one where we went like
No,
6 hours.
no, that was after because the Dave Smith one was like 5 hours.
Oh,
That
okay.
was with Matt Erickson and stuff. And I don't think you and I had ever really talked. I think it was that episode that got us talking.
Oh,
And
okay.
then you came on, I don't know, whatever. I forget them now. We've
Yeah, I
done so
mean,
many of them.
that
It's
was.
hard to
I mean, it
keep track
seems
of.
like forever ago too. So,
Well, it was like it was like 2 years ago. Jesus.
it seems like forever.
Mm.
So, but yeah, I mean, those were fun though. Like doing those were it's always fun to do those.
We're gonna
Those
keep doing them.
conversations just go in all kinds of wild directions. Like there's no telling where we can go. And so it's always a lot of fun.
the new weekly show that I got to get you on, but I know you've been busy, so I haven't bothered inviting you on. But I have a new weekly show on Thursdays called Meet the Base,
I saw
and
that.
it's kind of the same, a similar concept where I invite a panel, usually about four people, and myself on to discuss news events or whatever is going on. So it's a bit more topical, a little less evergreen, but it's taking that sort of core concept of uh, a friend or fed, the more rambling aspect of it, and kind of
Mm.
putting it on a weekly show. And I'm still planning on doing friends or feds. It's just finding time. Like I was describing it to someone the other day. I'm like, I just got a lot of plates spinning it all the time. So you got to like, if you want to get, I'm not trying to ignore you. It's just like you got to DM me. You got to like reach out to me
Mm.
and be like, hey, I'm over here. I'm like, oh right, yes, okay. And then I will carve out time to talk to you. It's never, you know, a personal thing. It's just more like if it's not here, like if you're not setting off a flare, I'm you know, I'm thinking over here. So you gotta direct my gaze a little bit. But and that's, and, you know, anyone listening to this, if anyone wants to reach out and talk or, you know, that, just DM me on X. It's at 2-bit podcast. You know, I always like to talk to people, whether it's about the show or get you on for a guest or anything like that. But yeah, you just gotta, you gotta set off some flares these days, because doing the show, working full time, being a dad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just, it's at some point I'm like,
Well,
like,
yeah,
what is that
life
from? So
life gets busy, man. And then
yeah,
you've added a couple of shows. I've noticed that you've added a couple of shows onto your plate, and I'm like, man, it's always hard to do that because then you're taking away time from other things, And so it's like Thomas Sowell always said, there's no such thing as solutions, only trade-offs. And you're always trading off and taking away time from other things. Um, whenever I stopped driving over the road and I came and started working locally, like what I realized very quickly was the trade off was I wasn't intaking near as much information as when I was over the road. When I was by myself all the time and I had nothing to do, like all I was doing was listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, and
mm-hmm.
I just don't do it as much as I used to.
I
Just
have the
because
exact same problem right now. Yeah,
there's other things to do. I get home and I look around and I'm like, oh, the grass needs to be mowed, Oh, I gotta move this pile of dirt. Oh, I gotta do this. Oh, I gotta do that. And it's always something, that the wax ring on my toilet went out or the stove goes out. Or, like it's always something. It's always something.
we'll get to the Trump talk in a second, but or maybe we won't. I don't know. We'll just vamp for 2 hours. Fuck it. But what is a podcast? I don't know. Yeah, I think it's people don't really appreciate or understand this thing until you start doing it. Um, because the actual job, like what we're doing here, it is easy because we've talked what, how many times, like
Oh,
on and off
yeah.
air, like,
Well,
you know,
yeah,
whatever.
it's constantly
Um,
we're texting each other and yeah,
yeah,
always.
yeah. So it there's a familiarity where we can just go and it doesn't matter, right? But oftentimes when you're bringing someone new on who you don't know or don't have that relationship with, uh you gotta, you're balancing all of that, plus you're thinking, you're trying to do free form thought and link it back to the conversation. And then, you know, how I structure the show when I'm doing live shows, like I'm paying attention to the chat and I'm producing and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, like, and I'm doing clips, and like it's just, it doesn't seem like it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of work.
Mm.
And even just a pre-show, like getting all your ducks in a row to, like, you know, have a conversation and not shit the bed and look like a complete idiot. Which is what my constant fear is, like, oh god, especially when you bring in like heavy hitters, like I have Oren on this one, that I'm like, my job here is to not look like an idiot. because
Yeah.
I could, because, you know, I've always said and maintained this, like, I'm not that smart, I'm just not fucking stupid. And so sometimes when you're hanging with really smart people like David Gronowski or something like that, you have to know when to like sit back, uh and when to engage, and like that ebb and flow and that kind of thing. There's no formula for it, I don't think, or if there is, I wouldn't use it anyways, because then it would get boring. But I'd rather make mistakes and have an imperfect show that occasionally produces brilliance rather than have a perfect show that is just like Timcast, and that's honestly me not throwing shade on anybody, on Tim
Mm,
or anybody. It's just like that kind of thing. I wouldn't be able to maintain it. Like the
right.
the the inertia needed, it would feel too much like work. And part of the thing that I like about how I structure things or not structure things or whatever, is that uh, it keeps me interested. It keeps me like there's a mystery to it. Like, ooh, how's this going to turn out? I don't
the
know.
the way I do it, and I just had two new guests on right in a row. So I had Matt Brown, former UFC fighter, on, and then I had
Oh,
Mano
nice.
Elia was on, like, back to back. And I always tell, like, when new guests come on, somebody I've never had on my podcast, no matter how much we've DM'd and talked or whatever, I always tell them, I'm like, look, like, don't worry about, like, the content. Like, we're just
Mm,
going to have a conversation. This is kind of like a get to know you type episode. We're going to keep it right at an hour. We're not going to go, but maybe a couple of minutes over, but we're going to be right at an hour, and we're just going to have a conversation that we can both enjoy and both engage in. And you don't have to be like too worried about that, because this is a get to know
mm.
you podcast. The next time I invite
That's
you
that's
on,
smart.
when I get you on again, because I will invite you on again, when I do invite you on again, then we're going to start digging into stuff and really diving in. So just
Right.
kind of relax, enjoy yourself. Let's just get to know each other a little bit. And it's kind of like the audience gets to watch me get to know people, you know?
Mm,
And so there's not all this whole pressure in the background of trying to figure out how to construct everything. I just like,
that's smart.
I have too much stuff going on to worry about, like, how I'm going to construct a podcast. When I get on my podcast, I just want to have a good conversation, an easy conversation, put out like good content for people to listen to and get some entertainment and some value, for the time that they're
Yeah.
spending.
It's really about connection. One of my side quest thoughts is, and I got to read more of him or access more of him, is Marshall McLuhan is having a bit of a springtime in certain circles, and one of the so Marshall McLuhan is the Canadian guy, media
Mm-hmm.
sciences guy who famously coined the phrase the medium is the message. Now, what I started doing a little bit of reading about him, one of the things that stood out to me was that the whole media sciences thing that he was involved with actually started in the 19th century. And it was really based on a lot of Aquinas kind of thinking, common sense being one of them, right? So a lot of their thinking was really kind of examining common senses and kind of extrapolating out of from there. And I think that's where he got to the medium as a message, which is a strange, I'm kind of calling it a dialectical paradox. It's similar to one of my phrases, which is the ritual and reality are one. So you're taking a dialectic, but you're making but when combined, it creates a paradox. The thing when I was reading when I was reading about that stuff was that there's an interesting phenomenon where the audience is referred to as the phantom, and it's the audience becomes assumed because let's break this down. So a radio show, like the medium is a message, so a radio show is particular to radio. So messaging from radio is different than, let's say, messaging from film. You could have the same general message, but the way you present it and the way that it's consumed or presented is different, just because the medium is different. When you get into things like the internet, well, what is the medium? The medium is everything. It can be audio, visual. You can present things in many, many ways. You can choose to limit yourself, like podcasts are limiting themselves more or less strictly to audio with a video component, but it's
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But it's multifaceted. So then it's like, okay, well, that can kind of confuses that dialectic a bit. What I've started thinking about is introducing it as a trinity. So instead of assuming, because now what streaming does, or a lot of us social media, it allows us to interact with the audience. The audience is no longer presumed or assumed; it's present. So now you have what I'm calling the trinity of media, which is the medium, the message, and the audience or connection. So what we're really doing, right, is presenting connection. And the stronger we connect with the audience, the more the audience connects with us, the better the show. Uh, and I'm not saying better in terms of like some objective characteristic of information. It's just like people will walk away maybe with more information, maybe not, maybe with a confirmation, I don't know, but they'll feel like they're part of something. And
Mm.
that feeling of being a part of something, like I've used the tagline quite often, like "you are not alone," has been a big part of what drives this my work, is like making people know that, hey man, if you're crazy, well, I'm crazy too. We're all crazy, right? We're all
Right.
mashugana. So cool, right? Like at least we can be crazy together,
Hmm.
and do this thing together, whatever this thing is, and then we can formalize what we want this thing to be. But it's I think that's the power of it, right? That streaming in a weird way. It's not that the audience was never there. It's confirming it. So now that Trinity is actually that media Trinity can be formalized, can be confirmed and used. Like, and I think as we're moving into this new age, getting back to the Trinity and really starting to formalize the Trinity in all things, looking for it, finding it, formalizing it, using it, you know, to deepen our understanding or our work, that's going to be really key. Because one of the things I think we've drifted away with in Christendom or in the West is that placing the Trinity in a center point of our lives and our civilization. And the further we drift from it, the more we get into unreality, because the Trinity is essentially the David Gradowski would call it, like, the cornerstone. The stone that was rejected is now given its place. Like, it's like that aspect of it is, you need it. Like, you
Hmm.
can't cast it out. Even though we damn well try. But I think that's also, sorry, I'll just end with this one. Is like, I think that's also the problem with multiculturalism, is that you can bring in uh, you know you can bring in a whole boatload of Europeans to, let's say, North America, and it generally works out. There's frictions and tensions and things you have to deal with, and historic yada yada, sure, but overall it works out because somewhere deep inside them there's a Trinity working on them, and there's that kind of deals with a lot of conflicts. When you bring in non-Trinitarian cultures into a Trinitarian culture, now you have the real conflict, because we're not dealing with just a I don't like tacos, right? Or
Hmm.
whatever, right? It's like, no, 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 no. There's two versions of reality here that are trying to fit with each other, and it doesn't work. Like, one of them has got to bend the other. And uh, we're seeing what happens when the West bends to the non-West, it falls apart. And civilization that requires that a Trinitarian civilization cannot cannot withstand a non-Trinitarian culture living in it. It doesn't work.
Mm.
So that's where that's where we're at. And I'm not saying we got to expose people, but we got to convert them. It's like either you got to convert them or you got to get rid of them.
Hmm.
I'm more of the conversion side. I'm more of a, hey, let's bring them to Jesus, and it'll be fine. But if that's not working, well, option B is still an option. So,
Yeah,
and I
because I
guess it's
mean,
Trump. So,
well, I mean, we're looking. I mean, I see this in our culture constantly, and maybe not necessarily for the Trinitarian and non-Trinitarian, but what's his name? Is it Scott Adams, the
mm-hmm.
the Dilbert guy?
Gilbert, yeah,
Yeah. Um, he
he's
had made a
going through an interesting arc. Eh?
Is he? I don't know. I don't keep up with him. I just remember a couple of years ago he had made a comment about our culture is like two people looking at the same television watching two different movies simultaneously. And I that's nothing has exposed that more than the way that Trump gets treated, right? Like cuz I'm not the biggest Trump fan. I've never been a huge Trump fan. I have all kinds of issues with Donald Trump. But the way that he's being treated by the people that I despise, I'm like, I might
Mhm.
just vote for the guy just because. It's just like Michael Moore had said, he's like the biggest middle finger there is, you know? And it's like, okay, y'all keep wanting to treat him this way for absolutely ridiculous reasons, you know? It's like, all right, yeah. So your problem is that he he may not want to get rid of the power in Washington and really um you know kind of diversify and decentralize that power, but he does want to use that power for the exact same purposes that y'all have been using the power for the last 100 years or whatever it may be. And
Yeah,
the fact that that he pisses you off that bad makes me want to be on his side.
he's definitely a fly in their ointment. Um, maybe because he's not. Maybe they know something about him that we don't, um, or whatever. Or
Well, because I don't think he's a true believer in the deep state in this in the three letter agencies. He's just not a true believer, right? Into what the power structure and how it's been designed, ever since they assassinated JFK.
yeah, what did it for me, what softened myself to Trump, and I think that's kind of what we were saying before we started recording, that the liberals are freaking out because it's gaining him the court case and all that stuff. The conviction is giving him popularity, but it's also, I think, I reading that and looking at it saying, I think it's gaining him sympathy within the left, because again, all Westerners, whether you're a devout atheist, raised atheist, all that stuff, you were raised in a Christian culture. Like, Western civilization doesn't exist without Christianity. That's how it is. And I'm sorry,
Mm.
you don't have to agree with me, but it's true. So get over it. Um, Read Tom Holland, Dominion, if you want reference. Well, the thing that softened me with Trump was when they went after him for liking his steaks well done, and I was like, okay, fuck you. Like, I was on board with the whole like he's too racist or too this or too that or too orange or whatever. Okay, fine. But when they started lambasting him for his food choices and making fun of him for like McDonald's or whatever it was,
Mm.
I was like, I'm okay, I'm out. Like, I'm now, I don't know if I would say I'm pro him, because I'm not really pro or anti most people, but I'm anti Biden now because it's just like, this is ridiculous. I'm anti Biden just to save Biden. I just feel bad for the guy now.
Mm.
But
I've been saying since day one that it was elderly abuse, what was going on with that.
it's so sad.
So, yeah.
It's so sad. Like, why are
Can
you
you
doing this to?
imagine? Could you imagine your wife doing that to you? Like in front of the
No,
nation? Like, my wife would never, she would never do that to me. She would be like, no, you don't need to be out there doing that. You don't,
it's worse than Justin Trudeau's wife cucking him. It's worse. Like,
yeah. That's
because
like
and I
so disrespectful. It's such little account for his well-being, his mental health, like in the rest of his life. I mean, how much when you hit 80, you don't have much longer to go, right? And she's willing to sacrifice that little bit of time that they have left together for what, power, for money? Like what is wrong with you?
protection, maybe. I don't
Maybe.
know.
I don't know.
Um, yeah, and I get it. I mean, Joe Biden's a bad guy, right? Um,
Mm,
we can admit that he's a bad guy,
sure.
but even bad guys don't deserve what's happening to him on some
Right.
level. I think
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
what's happening to Trump is bad enough, but that's legal war. That's part of this apocalypse. This is part of the unveiling, right? Where now everyone gets to see, because it's not like lawfare hadn't been going on for a while. Now, I haven't followed this up, but there's a new thing about Alex Jones apparently trying to shut him down or yada yada yada.
Mm,
But it's formalizing things in a way that now is activating, what Matt Erickson has talked about with the PayPal mafia. Uh, if you're paying attention to things like Elon Musk just made there's a headline saying he just made peace with what's his name, the CEO of Morgan Stanley, I think.
Mhm.
Um, anyways, one of those guys who had been sort of the head
I
of an
saw I saw a head
adversarial.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I saw a headline today
no, no.
about Elon Musk pursuing a position in the Trump administration.
Well, I don't know if he's pursuing it. I think what I remember it being is that there was a rumor. Well, there's a confirmation that the two of them have met.
Mm.
Um, and just recently, Bukele met with Donald Trump's son, Don Jr., which is interesting as well. But let me see if I can find the uh, thing. Here it is. Yeah, Elon Musk and Jamie Dimon are making peace. This is from the Wall Street Journal. The
And who's
relationship
Jamie
between
Dimon again? I know the name, but
Jamie Dimon is he's the CEO, I believe, of J.P. Morgan,
okay,
so the major financial bank.
gotcha.
The underscore is the relationship between Jamie Dimon and Elon Musk began to sour when the bank balked at underwriting Tesla vehicle leases some 8 years ago. I'm just reading from the top of the headline. After years of feuding, the business titans spoke at an exclusive J.P. Morgan summit, opening the door for their working together soon. Um, this is another section of the article. In the case of J.P. Morgan, Tesla has a very negative relationship with J.P. Morgan. Musk testified in a court case in January 2023. J.P. Morgan hates Tesla in a nutshell. Musk is the kind of client J.P. Morgan and Diamond typically covet. One of the world's richest people, he's a potential client for wealth management advice and runs a collection of companies that could use banking, fundraising, and deal making services. He brings challenges. Loans other banks made for his Twitter acquisition have lost significant value, but most bankers are eager to stay on his good side. This is talking about Musk
Mm.
for fees from his transactions and potential initial public offerings, such as his rocket company SpaceX. This kind of goes into like there was an article about Elon Musk being the new Don. Um, I've said that I think Elon and Peter Thiel have a very interesting relationship that they started during PayPal, where it looks like Elon's taking is the public face of a lot of things, and Peter's working in the background. And it's not that Peter doesn't do public talks; he does, but Peter likes to pick and choose where Elon's out there, and Peter doesn't like to be out there. So they're both of them are working in tandem, I think now, and that's really when I had mentioned to Matt about this PayPal mafia thing, and I was like, "There's a connection to Vivek somewhere," and then Matt went full Erickson, and we were on a live call doing it, and he was just started pulling up stuff, and he was like, "Wait, whoa, whoa, whoa." Right. And Matt was making all these connections. And the more he made connections, like, oh shit, like intuition confirmed, right? And
Right.
all these roads lead back to Peter Thiel
Mm.
and this counter elite
Well, I had been
theory
saying
thing.
that for a while, and I'm glad Matt
So have
picked up on
I.
it because
So yeah,
yeah, because I never followed up on it, but I always kind of I don't. There was a episode I did probably about a year ago with Courtney Turner, and we were talking about Vivek, and we were talking about I don't remember all the details about the conversation. I'd have to go back and listen to what we were saying, but I was like, I find it interesting that all these guys that are making moves, like Elon Musk, this was when he was buying Twitter. This was before the acquisition had gone through for Twitter. I remember that because we were talking about that, and she was making a point. She was like, "Do you think Elon's your friend?" And I said, "No." But he has the same enemies as me, and as long as his attention is pointed away from me and pointed at my enemies, I'm going to back him. But I understand that tomorrow his attention could turn and shift towards me. I get that.
right.
Not me like as in, but me as in the royal me, like those of us who kind of have this train of thought. And so I was like, but I'm aware of that and I get it. But I found it interesting whenever I was doing research for that podcast that Peter Thiel was financing Elon Musk, that he had given Elon a bunch of money. for the
Mhm.
acquisition of Twitter. And I started looking at like all these movers and shakers that I was kind of like half-ass paying attention to, like Vivek, and seeing their ties to Peter Thiel. And I was like, that's really interesting. And I brought that
You
up
know,
with
do you
Courtney.
know who what Peter Thiel also basically he's I think he's the chief shareholder in Rumble.
Really?
Yeah. And what is Rumble? Rumble really is an integrated video software company that uses that's whose storefront, whose like proof of purchase essentially is their YouTube style storefront. That's the
Mm-hmm.
storefront. What they're really selling you is the integrated video player. That's their bread and butter. That's what they're. It's like how Netflix for a long time was like. Netflix had when the heyday of Netflix, you could use the app and watch all the movies, but their mainstay for forever, and I think it's dropped off now, was by being by being like Blockbuster, but they would mail you the CDs. I remember I first
Yeah, I
encountered
remember
I
those
first encountered
days.
them. Yeah, I first encountered them in like in the early 2000s in Europe,
Yeah.
because we were just like my girlfriend and I at the time would order up from Netflix and they would send you worldwide.
They'd send you the DVDs and then you just send
Yeah,
them back in a couple of days. Yeah. I remember
yeah.
that.
Oh, so Peter
And
does a
that's
lot
where
of
this
those
whole
things.
Redbox concept came from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's interesting. Sorry, I cut you off there,
No,
John.
no,
But
you're fine. I was just saying that I remember recognizing that he was backing a lot of people that I was kind of following, and it wasn't until I recognized that he was financially backing Elon Musk during the Twitter acquisition that I started like finding I'd see his name popping up, and I'd be like, oh, oh. And I always thought, I need to look into this guy. And I never did. And so when Matt started digging into it, I was like, oh, I'm so happy somebody's doing that. Because I
mm-hmm.
remember looking and seeing it. And just, I was so obsessed with ESG at the moment that I never like followed up on it. And it was something I should have followed up on. So I was really happy to see Matt following up on that.
Well, and this is a thing, right? And this is the thing that Matt uncovered when he's doing all those connections. Like I knew Peter was important. I just didn't know how important he was. And my interest in Thiel became because I got into Gerard,
Mm.
and Peter Thiel was a student, like a direct student of Gerard. He
Oh,
attended
really?
his lectures. Yeah, yeah. So, and he's talked about a lot of them, and he's used. Once you understand Girardian memetics, he's using it in very interesting ways. So, because in Gerard, he talks about models and mediators. So some people are models, like people want to be like them, and they're presented as someone to be like, and other people are like mediators who direct you towards the desires that they want you to desire. He uses the example of Iago in what's that Shakespearean play? One of the black dude. Shoot.
Othello?
Othello. Thank you. Iago is kind of directing Othello, right?
Mm.
So, so Thiel is very much a mediator, where he's directing people to what they want to desire, and in a way, in a weird way, he's very much a model for a lot of VC guys. See, Elon is a model for the kids. There is when Matt was on AA show and talking about it, and he was kind of presenting some of these ideas. AA at first was kind of academic agent, I should say, was at first a little hesitant, and then he thought about it. He was like, "Wait, I was out." A was telling the story, and I'm paraphrasing, but he was out to dinner with his family, and he saw a young boy with a T-shirt saying, I want to be a genius like Elon Musk with a rocket on it or something like that." Right?
Mm.
That's modeling.
Mm-hmm.
So kids, there's a lot of young boys, especially, who want to be like Elon Musk, who are going to start styling themselves like Elon Musk. So, what is Elon Musk? Well, he's pronatalist. So, I think you're going to see a baby boom in the next 20 years because a lot of young men, you're getting them young, so that they're not going to understand the model. They're going to incorporate it, and maybe if asked, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I love Elon," right?
Right.
But then you're going to start seeing them, you know, model more and more of his style, if not his behavior, in many ways to try to be like him, to get as close to him as possible. This gets into mirroring and a whole bunch of other stuff, which is a whole different conversation. But Peter Thiel, interesting enough, by when Matt was doing all his work and I'm following along with him, we started looking at a lot of VC bros, right? So a lot of the guys he's connected to, I forget their names, but I think this guy called Lionsgate or something like that, who's CEO of Palantir, another Peter Thiel thing, and a bunch of others. And you start looking at them because they all have podcasts or appearing on podcasts, and their style
you,
and their hi.
Jason says hi, baby. Jason,
hi,
you're
baby.
Jason. Hi, I love you.
I'll take the love. Their style, their haircut, their clothing, like everything. This is I started dressing up on shows to kind of prove the point that this modeling is happening, and it's happening in very interesting underscored ways. So when you're starting to think about what is a counter elite, and you go, well, there's no proof of it. There's proof of it everywhere. It's visual. It's in your face.
Yeah.
Like you just have to know where to look and go, who's originating this? Who are they copying? Who are they modeling? Well, they're modeling this guy. They're not just going to model his haircut. They're going to model his thoughts, his actions, his desires. What he wants becomes what they want. Why? Because he's freaking successful. He's Peter Thiel, right? Like if you're going to model yourself as you want to be successful in the VC world, well, you'd probably pick the most successful person in the VC world, or one of the most successful people,
right?
And that's undeniably Peter Thiel. So this gets into my prediction about the neo-trads, is that the neo-trads movement, which is going to be like a reinvention of the woke, when the woke gets put away, to quote unquote, it's going to be not really put away, it's going to be transformed into this neo-trad thing, which I think is going to be directly modeling Peter Thiel, right? Sensible. So it's not the gays will go away. It'll be sensible gays. Pride parades will go away. The decadence will go away. It'll be more like a Dave Rubin style gay, sensible gay men in nice little haircuts and sweater vests buying children. So like that shit's not going away, but it'll just be incorporated, and it'll be dressed up and given a new veneer, which is, again, does that mean he's our guy? No, but he's certainly more our guy than theirs, and that's a good thing. Like the thing that we really need to stress home about certain things is that you're always looking for leverage, right? And if you can't have leverage, you're looking for positioning. So if you're in a position where you have no moves, you got to get to a place where you can have moves. The reason I moved from Canada to Australia wasn't even because of the climate. Like I'm a fish out of water where I'm at. Don't get me started. But I looked around my situation during COVID. I realized that my family was small and dying. My wife's family was large and still quite youthful for the most part. My daughter would have a much better family base here than out there. I quickly took a look around my resources and said, well, I'll have more moves here than there. So that's why I turned to my wife and was like, if we can do it, let's do it. We did it. And has it disenfranchised me to a certain degree? Yes. But that's not the point. The point is now my daughter is safe. I don't have to worry about my daughter. Like if I die tomorrow, I know my daughter is going to be all right. So because she's got,
and you say that you're saying that because of the amount of family around, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, because from my understanding, and I could be completely wrong, and you can correct me here if I'm wrong. From my understanding, governmentally, it's not much different.
It's pretty much the same.
Okay,
pretty much the same. Western Australia is a little less intense than, let's say, Victoria, mostly because they have a mining culture out here, which is like the backbone of the Australian economy. So they don't fuck with us so much.
I need to get you on with Kim.
Yeah,
Kim Robinson. He's
I know I think you've mentioned him before.
Yeah, he's Australian. He still lives in Australia. He's a former professional mixed martial artist, and he writes for the Libertarian Institute. And I had him on a while back. It was me, him, and Matthew Ho, and we were discussing war and that type of stuff. And one of the things Kim told me was like it wasn't all of Australia that went full totalitarian during the lockdowns. That it was certain segments of Australia that
Yeah.
we were being shown over here, but it wasn't like the entire country that was going full lockdown.
Western Australia closed their borders. So like Western Australia is not really a big destination place, and they don't really rely on tourism. They get them, right? We have the best surfing and the beautiful crikey, mate. If you come out to where I'm living, one of the first things someone's going to tell you in the first like hour of being here is like, oh yeah, I mean, we got the most beautiful beaches in the world, mate. Like this is like everyone tells you this. Like for the first year, I was inundated with how beautiful our beaches are, and I had to tell them like, I fucking hate beaches. I hate beaches. I don't go in the ocean. I don't wear shorts. Do you understand this? I don't wear shorts.
And they're
out in
like,
public.
"No, mate, not beaches, beaches."
Yeah. Okay. Here's an aside, right? Here's an aside. I was moving some stuff down from Perth to where we at, and what the guy who was driving with his family friend, and he was very based on COVID, like super based on COVID, more based on COVID than even I was. And we were talking, and I was like, all right, let's test the waters here, because like let's see how based you are, right? And this is a confirmation that like a lot of times with the friend enemy distinctions and shit, like everyone's very
Right.
Schmittian these days, which is like it's getting gay, folks. Sorry, but I was like, all right, let's find out how based you really are, and I let loose this tidbit. So I'll tell you the story this way: my grandfather, Ukrainian, Polish guy, who was my surrogate father, came out with a few tidbits as I was growing up, and that I followed. Right, whether I agree with them or not, whether it makes sense or not, it's just things I do. So one of the things that I do is I don't wear shorts in public, because my grandfather once said that shorts are for children, women, and queers, and so you don't wear shorts out in public. And I don't do that. And so I told him that story.
That
Australians really
theory,
don't like that story.
I've heard you say this before, and I'm not going to lie to you. It fucked me up because I wear shorts to work a lot. And every time I put them on, I get a little self-conscious.
Hurts you a bit, doesn't it? It hurts you. I've done it. I've worn shorts out in public, and I always feel like a fucking queer. I can't do it. I can't do it. And again, I'm not even saying he was right.
I want to wear a sign.
Right.
I want to wear a sign around my waist that says "This is not a booty call." Just
here's a funny thing for anyone who's listening to us on video. In the background is my grandfather and my grandmother were getting married. My grandfather was part of the Black Watch. He was in the reserves in World War II. He's wearing a kilt. He's probably the only Ukrainian man who ever get married in a kilt, right? So he's wearing a fucking dress. So it's not like I'm saying that what he's saying is reasonable, logical, or advice you should take into your heart. However, that was my dad. Essentially, that's my father figure who told me some shit, and I'm like, all right. The other thing he told me, because he had a tattoo on his forearm from the reserves, was like, one of those shitty mom tattoos. And I remember sitting on his lap, and I don't know, 6, 7 years old. And he said, he's pointed to it. He's like, see this thing? I'm like, yeah. He goes, this is the dumbest thing I ever did. Never do this. And I've never gotten a tattoo because of it. And again, it's not like I'm telling people who've had tattoos, you're a bad person, or
you're talking to me, so
right. I'm being conscious of the room. But at the same time, it's like and I've thought about it. I've thought about like I once had a roommate who was a tattoo artist, and I was like, well, maybe, and he's offering to tattoo me for fucking nothing. And just my grandfather's voice hit my head. I'm like, can't do it. Sorry. Just
dude, in his memory,
I wish he had said that about smoking, because he was an ex-smoker. Right. I was like, we really wish he had hammered that one home, but like,
no, in your grandfather's memory, you should get a tattoo that says the dumbest thing I ever did.
He'd still be so disappointed. He could do that disappointed dad thing so good. Like it was just like never hit me and stuff like that. Didn't never needed to.
No, but
Just could just
I
do
mean
the aw.
that's
Could
because
you
he
could
was
do the aw,
Ukrainian.
Jay? Yeah, just could do the aw, Jay. What are
Yeah.
you doing? And you just feel like that. You'd feel 2 feet tall. When I was only 3 feet tall, I was still felt two. It's like, all right, yeah, you're right. I'm an idiot.
Well, let's get back on Trump a little bit. Let's talk about
Mm-hmm.
this because there are some things that I've noticed that have kind of you made a comment earlier about like libertarians being the stupidest people like you've ever met. Uh and
Well, no, the ideology is stupid. The people
right.
involved in it, I'm sure, like are very nice people. Some
And
of them are nice.
most of them are
They're not
extremely
sending us their
smart.
best. They're not sending us their best. I'm just saying.
Most of them are
Some of them
extremely
are
smart.
nice.
Most of them are extremely smart, but they're you get caught up a lot of times. It's very easy to get caught up in your own bubble and kind of forget that there are other ideas, other people out there. And libertarians are usually antisocial people, and they just kind of like they're kind of self-absorbed, and I don't mean that as they're egotistical or anything like that. It's just they don't really have a whole lot of relationships, and
Mm.
and you can tell which ones are like this and which ones aren't. Like, right, like if I mentioned Dave Smith, you would never think Dave Smith's that type of person. He's just a smart guy who's found an economic system that he agrees with, which I actually agree with, the Austrian economic system. I mean, I think that's the best economic system, but it's not the economic system that the country follows. It's not the economic system that's in power. So I kind of look at it and go, yeah, that would be nice, but that's just not reality. That's just not the way the world works. So, like, why are we even arguing about it? You know? Um, but for the first time that I know of in history, a major political candidate that has a chance of becoming the president of the United States went to the Libertarian Party convention, spoke to the Libertarian Party, offered them a seat at the table. I've never heard of libertarians getting offered a seat at the table. Offers them a seat at the table, said, I want to put libertarians in my cabinet, in my administration, so that I have that influence in my ear, so that I know like what y'all are thinking. Cause I don't think that way. That is not the way I think, but I want to have that influence in my ear so I understand the libertarian position on these things so that I can
Thank
make
you, Vivek.
better. Yeah, exactly. So that I can make better decisions, that are more constituted around liberty. Basically, is what Donald Trump was saying, and he got booed. And I don't get on Twitter a whole lot, but when I do get on there, all I see are people shitting on Donald Trump, libertarians shitting on Donald Trump, and I'm like, no other political candidate has ever offered you a seat at the table. And instead of saying, you know what, we can influence this guy. I don't need to understand what this guy thinks because we have 4 years to look at and see kind of how Donald Trump works. But he's willing to accept our influence. And I'm unwilling to influence him because I don't like the way he thinks currently. And it's like, dude, take the small victory because you have nothing else. Nothing.
This was my major fallout with your buddy Kyle and the a lot of the other guys surrounding it, and just the Mises Caucus people in general. I remember about
Kyle's a
a year
good
or two
dude.
ago.
I'm going to stick up for
Oh
Kyle. Kyle's a good
no,
guy.
look, I'm my. I'll explain. I'll explain to you where our conflict came from, or my side of that conflict. He had shared out, and it wasn't even his meme. I don't think. I don't know. Right? There was a meme going around um, of Meghan McCain crying at her father's funeral,
Oh, Reed
and
Coverdale made that meme.
right, and they put it out on the anniversary of his death to
Mm-hmm.
mock John McCain. Now, look, John McCain's a bad guy, right? Was a bad guy, is a bad guy, whatever, right? You pose everything he was ever for,
Right.
pose him as a
Right.
human being, whatever have you. And I'll put my own, let's say, orthodox humanity thing to the side on this one, just simply
Yeah.
saying, hey, really not good to mock someone's grief. Okay. Here's the thing that I explained with Kyle, and we had a tussle, and I just blocked him, and I blocked all those people because I was like, you're not getting it, especially as a political party, because I think this was also done under the something Mises caucus that yada. I was like, you understand how
I think it was the
bad
Mises Caucus of
this
New
is,
Hampshire.
right? Do you understand how bad political messaging this is? Do you understand how anti-propaganda this is? Because now people are looking at this, they're going to have a really bitter taste in their mouth because it hits you sort of like this is revolting, right? Especially if people who may not have an animus towards a hatred towards John McCain or Meghan McCain, they might have their may not like them, but they're not like vehemently against them. They don't hate them, right? And there's all they're seeing is you're mocking a woman, a daughter's grief to her father's death. I'm like, do you understand how bad this is politically? And everyone was like, no, no, ha ha ho. And I'm like, block. Okay, you're not serious people. Like, don't tell me you're running for you're not. Don't tell me you're trying to spread a message or running for office if you think this is a good idea and are standing behind this and then running for office. This is so effing retarded, politically speaking, power position wise. I can't, and I'm trying to explain magic to a monkey. Like you don't get it. And the same thing, booing Donald Trump after he's basically saying, "Hey, man, elect me as your head. If and when I win, and they're going to have to kill this dude. He'll win from prison at this point. Like, his support now, he just won the black support. Like he just took the black vote, the black male vote at least, anyways. And I'm sure a lot of black women will go along with it as well. Like he's now insurmountable, and he's only growing. The thing with the UFC crowd, like that's 20,000 people, whatever it was.
My son, yeah,
chanting
my
for
son
him.
was. I told you this already, and I've said it several times. My son was there, and he said when Donald Trump was walking in, not only every time Donald Trump shows up to a UFC event, they play Kid Rock American Badass as an
Right.
intro song as if he's about to fight, which is freaking hilarious to me. And he walks out with Dana White, and as he's walking in, the
Joe
entire
Rogan's
crowd.
on his side now.
Well, and my son said, because I'm watching in real time, but my son's there, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. And Daniel Cormier is like, I can't repeat what they're saying. So I asked my son, I said, are they saying fuck Joe Biden? And he said, no, they're saying let's go Brandon. The entire stadium, 20,000 people were chanting let's go Brandon for like 2 minutes solid as Donald Trump walked into the arena. So yeah, no, you're right. And you know what I thought of, and this is silly, but you know what I thought of when you brought up that Meghan McCain meme, because I remember when that all that happened, and there was so much shit about it, and that was Reed Coverdale being Reed Coverdale edge lording. It
Look,
had it had
and just
it
sorry, Tommy,
actually
just
it
let
had
me.
less to do with Meghan McCain and John McCain. What Reed Coverdale was doing was he was attacking the Libertarian Party. And he was saying, you people will stand up for John McCain before you will stand up as anti-war or for freedom. He was making a statement. I know what he was doing because I'm friends with Reed, but yeah, you're right. It was not the best way to go about it. And what it reminded me of, you remember that book, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark? Did y'all have
Vaguely,
that
I
up
don't
in
think I read it, but no,
Okay.
but I know
So
the title. Yeah.
there was one of the poems in the first Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Don't ever laugh as a hearse goes by, for you may be the next to die. And that's
Mm-hmm.
like the first like I could recite that entire poem. Like, you know, and because I used to read that all the time. And I remember that poem as being, oh wow, okay, yeah, this is why people pull over out of respect for the dead as hearses go by. It was just kind of like one of these things. And
My
so,
mom used to
yeah,
say,
no,
"Oh,
I definitely see your point. You have a valid point.
my mom used to say that never wish death upon people." Now, if Reed Coverdale or Kyle had just done that on their own personal account, I would still find it distasteful and whatever. But fine, right? That's a personal thing. The thing that I remember citing is that no, this got reposted by the Mises Caucus of New Hampshire or whoever.
Well, Reed
That's
had
that's
posted
the
it. Yeah, Reed had posted it as the one of the directors of the what do you call it,
right.
social media directors of New Hampshire's Mises Caucus. Yes.
That to me was the final retarded nail in the coffin. I'm like, you're not serious then. Like you can't be serious if you're, you know, I don't know, man. I just and you see the
I
Democrats
get no,
doing
I get what
similar
you're saying.
stupid
I'm
things,
not.
and you're like, this is why you're losing support. It's not even just your policies; it's that you're doing things that react negatively to people on a fundamental level. Like
Right.
you're triggering people's both disgust instincts and their sympathy instincts at the same time. So I'm
Well,
both
and
disgusted by what you're doing, and I feel sympathy for this poor woman who's crying at her father's funeral because she's a human being. You weirdo! Like, pick anything else, man. Like, shit on John
well,
McCain and left, right, and center. I don't
it,
care, but just that
it,
image alone is
and
like, oh,
one of the things you'll see if you spend any time in the libertarian kind of like atmosphere, and you just kind of like wander around that little section of the internet, is they're always claiming the moral high ground. And it's like
mhm.
you're claiming the moral high ground while trying to be edge lordy, and by being edge lordy, you're overstepping the bounds of morality as most people see it. And so yes, that could be a serious turnoff. And what the reaction is these people saw, they watched in 2016 when Donald Trump got memed into office. They
Mhm.
thought that for some reason, some of these guys thought that they were going to be able to do the same thing for a libertarian candidate. But you don't have the power structure behind you. You don't have the money behind you. There are other things necessary other than a lot of good, edgy memes, right? You can't just um, do what's the frog meme. You can't just do the frog meme and expect that Michael Rechtenwald's going to be the next president of the United States. That's not the way it works. As nice of a guy as Michael Rechtenwald is, I know Michael Rechtenwald. I've had him on my show several times. Good dude. I've never had a bad interaction with him. As good of a guy as he is, and as nice of a guy as he is, you're not going to meme that guy into office. That guy was not the host of The Apprentice. That guy does not have the name power of a Donald Trump or a Hillary Clinton or a Joe Biden. Like, these people have been in the public eye for so many years. People know who they are, and so they have this recognition. It's very rare that you're going to catch lightning in the bottle like Obama did, you know.
Mhm.
And even though Obama was part of a main political party, nobody knew who Obama was before he ran for president. Like, nobody had ever heard of
No.
the guy, you know. And so I mean, but that's such a rare occasion that you get a situation like that.
But
And they
people wanted to be like him. People wanted, like, it's like Clinton, right? Clinton won that election by playing sax on was it Arsenio Hall, right? By
Arsenio
being the
I'll
cool
also
guy, by being the cool, yeah, things that make you say, things that make you say, right? This is like,
I
okay,
just referenced CNC Music Factory the other day.
were you wearing parachute pants at the time? Um, this is like Girardian stuff, Girardian 101, right?
Mhm.
All desires are external. We don't know what to want until other people want it. Now we can say, well, what's the original, how, chicken and egg kind of thing. But when we start thinking about who people want to be like, that's who you need to have as your front runner, as your face of this thing. So the Dave Smith thing, and I am so glad. I am, thank the Lord that Dave didn't run. I'm so glad that, and we did that Dave Smith friend or fed, a lot of it praising Dave, and then a lot of it going, please do not run for the nomination. Please do not do that. It will blow up your life, and you'll get nothing.
Mhm.
The only thing you might be able to get to, and I'm remembering Cyprian and Matt on Clint Russell's show, where Cyprian was saying like this is predator stuff. Like if the only thing that would explain this is if you're doing this to enrich yourself, because otherwise you're just going to lead a lot of people to ruin, and yourself too. Like you're scared. This is a bad
He
idea.
he was actually
Um,
wrong about that, but I was not going to get involved in that conversation.
yeah, yeah, and I'm not,
Because I am kind of, I'm not like deep behind the scenes on this stuff, but I have enough contacts. I kind of know what was going on, and like
I
like
believe that
Dave,
Dave had every good intention in the books, right? Without knowing this man, with only consuming his content and stuff like that for many years, I honestly believe, and by the friendships that he had, like if I don't trust Dave, I can trust Buck, or I can trust you, and I can trust other people who've
Pete,
said nothing but
yeah,
good things, right? Pete.
yeah.
So I trust those guys, like because
I don't
I
know.
talk
I
to
don't
you,
know Dave. I don't know Dave personally. Let me
right?
tell you a story though. This just this told me more about him than anything I've ever like anything that anybody else could have ever told me. This said more about this man's character, and I think the world of Dave Smith, and it's not because I agree with him on everything, because there are things. I'm certain there are things that he and I would disagree on if we sat down and talked. And I've tried to get him on the show, and it's never happened, even though he's friends with a lot of my friends. It just hasn't happened. And I don't know if it's going to happen. But a couple of years ago, my my cousin and his wife had a baby. And a month after the birth, I think it was less than a month after the birth of the baby died. And they had to raise, they didn't have the money to pay for the funeral, and they needed $5,000 to pay for the funeral. And Beatrix had sent me the link to a GoFundMe that they had put together. And they didn't even know that I knew about this, but she had sent me the link to the GoFundMe, and I put it out on Twitter. And I was like, hey, man, this is my cousin. They're just trying to bury their baby. They just need 5 grand to bury the baby. If anybody could help, and I gave, what I could. I think I gave $100 because that's what I could afford at the time or whatever. And a few other people like donated, and then my buddy Scott Horton, and uh, saw it, and he was like, "Holy shit!" So he shared it, and the next thing I know is Dave Smith is retweeting it.
Mhm.
And he says, "Come on, guys, help this dude out." Now, this is right after his son was born that had the heart problems,
Right.
and they had gone through the surgery and all that stuff, and he had all that stuff going on with the health problems with his son. And so obviously he's kind of like, "Hey, man, like this is a shitty situation. I was almost there. Like, help this guy
Mhm.
out, type deal." And an hour later, I looked, and we were at I think it was at like 3,200 of the 5,000 that needed to be raised. And I logged off, and then my wife said, "Oh my God, you got $5,000 for your cousin." And I went back and I looked, and somebody right at the hour mark saw that it wasn't at 5,000 yet and put down the last $2,000. And I guarantee you it was Dave Smith. I guarantee it.
Mhm.
And I've put out notice to let people know, hey, thank him for me. I know even if it wasn't him personally that put that money would, that $2,000 donation would not have come if he wouldn't have said, hey man, this means something. And so just because he was able to put it, he was willing to put his name on the line to gather money for a situation. I'm like, the dude's got all my respect. I have nothing. I may disagree with him. I may think he's silly at times. But Legion of Skanks is definitely the funniest podcast on the internet. And, you know, uh, I was a big Jay Okerson fan, and long before I knew who Dave Smith was. So, yeah, man, I have nothing but respect for Dave Smith, and I don't have anything bad to say about him.
Well,
And
honestly,
I'm with you. I thought him running for president could have been a bad idea because of the things that, like, if you saw how Ron Paul was treated
mhm.
in his 2012 run, I think it was, and seeing like the Glenn Becks and all these guys like come down on Ron Paul and talk all this trash about, and oh, if you see somebody with a Ron Paul sticker on their bumper, they're more than likely a domestic terrorist. All that shit was going on, and I remember all that stuff going on. And to think about what could happen to Dave Smith and the way they could destroy his life, and screw up his family. Yeah, man. He was unintentionally being set up for failure. If he would have run for president, I think it would have been
Mhm.
bad news for him.
Well, what do you think? What do you think of? Sorry, roboting. I'm not sure if I'm just talking over you or not, but what do you think of his recent statements after the convention? He's come out and said he's taking a step back from libertarianism, or the LP, I think, Libertarian Party, because he's like, look, if this is the direction you guys want to go in, cool. I'm still going to believe all the things I believe, but I might need to step back. And he's like, what do you think, guys think I should call myself? at the,
I
at the end
think
of the clip, I was like, post libertarian sounds pretty good. Like,
I think it's a sign of maturity, and
yeah.
I think it's kind of what people were trying to tell him going in, that just because you start the Mises Caucus and you take over the LP, so to speak, you're not changing the dynamics of what has gotten these people, these former presidential candidates, like Joe Jorgensen or whoever, put in the position they were put into. That dynamic is just more intense now than it ever was. And so um I think yeah, there's a maturity that came with the realization that just taking over the Libertarian Party and does not guarantee a successful candidate for the
Well,
Libertarian Party.
there's also a fundamental flaw in libertarianism, which is that this liberty aspect, unbound with no checks and balances, because there isn't any, because you're basically saying you're at war with checks and balances. So you're going to just liberate yourself past politics, and that doesn't make sense in a political reality. Like, it's a hard and this is why, like, now you have this Chase Oliver guy who's just further left than the Democrats now. More liberal than the liberals, more left than the left. Well, we saw this in happening in Canada.
I don't know who Oliver is and why we're chasing him, but okay.
Well, I mean, he's chasing something. Um, all roads lead back to glory holes, my friend. But he says this during Pride Month, for shame. But we have this in Canada, where we had this party called the NDP, the New Democratic Party, which is basically the Socialist Party, or small C Communist Party of Canada. And they've always failed to claim an identity. They were having a hard time claiming identity, but it was easier when the Liberal Party of Canada was basically center left, the Conservative Party was basically center right, and then the NDP were like the further left party. And when the Liberals under Trudeau went further left, the NDP just didn't have an identity anymore. All they could go is further and further left, but Trudeau was like, "Oh, I can go as far left as trust me. You haven't seen left yet. What is this, child's play?" Like, and the NDP has now had to almost merge with the Liberal Party to have any. They've lost differentiation. This is something David Gronowski said on my show and his show and many other places, and it is a Girardian thing too. Is that um, the important thing to understand is that baked into the human consciousness is a need for differentiation, that we make we it's down to Adam. Adam names the things, right? And Adam
Mhm.
names the animals and the
Oh
world
yeah.
around it. He gives them borders. That so the pig is the pig, and so a pig is a pig and not a crow, right? Like, the names give them distinction and hold them together in some sort of
Identity.
differentiation, right? Exactly. uh and when you
which
go to war
which
with
actually
it.
speaks a lot to, I'm sorry, but it just speaks a
No,
lot
no.
to the world we live in with this whole, how do you identify yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not subject to the patriarchal, quote unquote, patriarchal identity that was assigned to you, which is the words they like to use. This was what I was assigned at birth, but you were able to identify yourself. So you are your own God.
Right. But the problem is, and I've covered this in I think with Pete, when it goes back to that show, that individualism is a civilization killer. Because when, or yeah, and I did a follow up with Adam Patrick about differentiation. Sorry, about I can't remember. Sorry, words elude me. It's still early, and I'm drinking wine. But anyways, go. People should go check that out. What I'm looking at is that this idea of individualism, right? This liberal individualism, why it ends up destroying things is that when you extend individualism to its fullest extent, you get mass collectivism. You're actually looking. This is the Nietzschean thing of the Ubermensch, right, or the C.S. Lewis with the unman. You've taken God out of the hierarchy, and you put this nebulous man, this ideal man, in his place, but no one can agree on what that man is. So it therefore has no distinction. There is no differentiation between man and God, right? This is the ultimate aim. This is the transhumanist aim. This is the we will become gods. This is the monadism. This is Gnosticism. This is all these things combined into one, right? So where
Mm-hmm.
James Lindsay's right and all these people are right at detecting this problem is like, yes, and liberalism, the entire artifice, whether it be fascism, communism, libertarianism, classic liberalism, all these things that are all different sects of this one ideology of this that were born is born out of this revolutionary spirit, destroys civilization because when you take it to its natural conclusions, you try to liberate man from man in order to become a god, but we can't be God. So all you're doing is liberating ourselves past these things that keep us in the distinction of man. What is man? Human, right? Man, woman, these distinctions. So when you squash differentiation, you don't get more perfect individuals. You get this mush collectivism that that isn't even born out of tradition. Because and what I've said is that the thing that really hit me with atheism when I woke up out of it was that the atheist has all of the world upon them. They've decided that they are going to become the ultimate arbiters of truth, morality, existence, reality itself is on them all the time because they don't have a tradition to go to. They've said, I don't believe in that tradition. Well, what tradition do you believe in? Oh, I believe in Spinoza. Okay, but what's the tradition of Spinoza? Like, how does this isn't a worldview? This isn't a phronema. It's an isolated idea of examining things, but you can't base your entire reality on that. Spinoza or libertarianism or whatever ideology or philosophy you want to go to cannot tell you what to do when your dad dies. Doesn't give you context. Doesn't tell you what to do when your child dies.
Mm.
Like that is the biggest fear. And you're a parent, I'm a dad. We all know. Like the first time your kid gets sick, and I'm talking, really sick. My daughter had a viral infection, and man, I prayed like praying to the hospital, praying back,
Yeah.
like because and it was fine. She was fine, and you kind of knew she was going to be fine. But there's always that thing in your back of your mind, like, what if she's not fine, right? What if this is it? And it's the worst fear. Like, uh, kill me 1,000,000 times, man. Go Romanian prison on me before you kill my daughter, like,
Mm.
or before my daughter has to die of whatever. It's
Mm-hmm.
uh, libertarianism can't deal with that. There's no mechanism in there because it's
Well,
all
here,
economic. So what is the free market?
here's the,
How's the free market to help you with that? Like, like it can raise money for you, and that's great, but it can't help you deal with it. The only thing you have to go back to tradition, to family, to the church, to something to help you deal with the emotional weight
right.
of that.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's what
gonna
I think is the
say.
difference between Fronema. Sorry, yeah.
No, I was just gonna say that what you're looking at is whether it's liberalism, communism, fascism, libertarianism, like whatever it is, You're it's a man trying to create a system that is equivalent to the system that God has given us.
Mhm.
But it's like you've abandoned God, so therefore you're trying to match that perfection. You're trying to match that enlightenment of what God has handed down to you already. You're trying to replace it with something that you created. It's like a Tower of Babel type of situation.
Pride. Yeah, and we're in Pride Month. It's pride. It's pride all the way down. You
Well,
know,
you saw the did you see the shirt I bought?
no.
No, Sean Strickland released a shirt, right?
Oh,
And
did he?
it's an American flag. And
I can just imagine now.
well, you know that famous picture, the World War II picture of the man that's kissing the woman,
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
right? Okay. So he's got that picture sitting on top of an American flag and it says American Pride Month. So I went in and bought it. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna wear this all June. I'm not gonna wash it or anything. I'm just wearing this. This is what I'm wearing during June. So every day it's American Pride Month for June.
Someone. There was an interesting ex post recently about that, and he's like, I'm going to paraphrase it here, but it was more like, for thousands of years, people have wondered what would happen if we set the gays free. You know, let them loose essentially on society and see what they could do. And in the 90s, there was this idea that if we do this, there'll be a renaissance. Like, you know, the gays will usher in this new renaissance of culture and imagination and wonderment and all that kind of stuff, good stuff. And that never came to
Come to find
fruition.
out, they
In
just
fact,
prey on your children.
right. A significant, let's just say a significant portion of them, right? Because I've known a lot of gay guys and lesbians who would never do that. But at the same time, it's a problem, right? It's an issue, and
I knew a
also
lesbian that didn't find out she was lesbian until after everybody else knew she was a lesbian.
while she was eating some woman out, she was like,
No,
"Wait, maybe I am."
she was dating some dude, and we're like, "You're a lesbian, you know that, right?"
Yeah. Anyways, um, I mean, I that gets into my theory, but there is no really gay lesbians, just
Yeah,
tragically abused people. But
yeah, yeah.
um,
It's
but
just preferences,
well,
choices,
yeah.
preferences. You
Anyways,
know,
that's
it's
that's
like
a that's a
it's like
that's a
it's
different
like
show, Tommy.
it's like whether you like blondes or brunettes. It's no different.
Mm,
You like
I think there's something that we're not dealing with as a society, and I think we're going to have to. It's coming to a point.
mm,
It wants to be dealt with,
mm.
I think we're being forced to. Is how prevalent uh, uh, abuse of children is in our society.
You should talk to
And
Joseph Chambra.
mm, um, I think that's when that movie, what was it, the child trafficking movie that came out a year or so ago, and got everyone all,
Oh,
I thought that,
about Operation Underground Railroad.
yeah, or was it that, or
Yeah,
the
yeah,
one where they
yeah.
were
It
doing
was
it in
about
Peru or
operate,
something?
and yeah, it was like I've been following Operation Underground Railroad for years, and I didn't realize that the movie was about that organization until like 3 months after it had come out. But I watched it. I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was a good movie. It was really good.
Yeah, but it's like you have the Epstein thing, realization of like pedophile networks,
Mm.
Pizzagate, what
P Diddy.
Alex Jones had to go through and stuff like that in connection to it. P Diddy, uh, all these things. Even Cat Williams, when he went on that show and it got like 50 million views or 100
I haven't
million
heard
views,
about
and like,
this.
oh yeah, Cat Williams is a comedian, black comedian, who
I
basically
know
just
who
like,
Cat Williams is. I just haven't heard
yeah, yeah.
any.
I'll send you a link.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the things I watched the whole thing. It's a pretty interesting conversation.
Okay.
He's specifically talking about humiliation rituals of black men in Hollywood, like about how every black actor, as soon as they get to a certain status, has to wear a dress.
Oh shit.
They'll come to you and say, "Hey, let's do this scene where you're wearing a dress," and he's like, "Why is this constantly happening?" And lots of other black actors have either confirmed it or have gone out of their way to try to deny it because they were also wearing a dress
So
at some point in their career.
so Will
That,
Smith said no, and they made him perform in Bad Boys.
right. No, in Beyond Earth or whatever it was called. Um, so anyways, so we're this
Keep
thing
my
is
wife's name out your mouth.
yeah, he had to go, he had to do some black on black crime
he had to go
to
full
avoid the dress.
Chicago on this motherfucker.
He says I wear a dress.
I'm sorry, I just hijacked what you were saying. Go ahead.
No, it's all part of it. This is part of the apocalypse, right? All things hidden shall be revealed. And the really big cornerstone to this, and I think this actually going back to Trump might be part of their freak out with Trump, is I think Trump's not part of that. They try to link him to it, but he's not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think their biggest scare in the world is if he gets back in and now really pissed off. Maybe he was trying to do it and couldn't do it really in his first term. What if he gets in the second term and goes, "We're going to reveal all of this. I don't have to put you in jail."
That's dude.
These
This
people
is
are
my
drag you out the
this
street
is my thing.
and
This is
bring
my
up nice
thing.
things to you. And by the way, this is my corner. This is sorry. This is one of my cornerstone thoughts about the spirit of the vengeful son. That the spirit of this new age is going to be one of totalizing violence. Because I'm betting on this, Tommy, and it's just an intuition, but delivered to me by God. So we'll see how this plays out. But I every single indication I'm looking at tells me that there's going to be something that gets revealed that will result in mass violence, the kind of violence we have not seen in a very long time. Yeah. Because it will activate people on a primordial level where they're going to go, "Oh no, enough of this. We're going to go ham." And I'm not endorsing it, by the way. I'm saying we shouldn't do it, and I'm telling people to not lead into it. But the danger of it is it's going to feel good when certain people, get exposed. Let's put it that way, and the ramifications of that exposure. Because I'm telling you that this child abuse thing, man, it wants to come out. It's dying to come out. Mm-hmm. It needs to come out because I think it's the cornerstone to understanding the LGBT stuff, to trans stuff, to a lot of stuff. I'm not saying every single person who's homosexual has been abused sexually, but I'm saying there's a lot of it.
And I'm not above that vengeance, right? Because how many times have I posted a wood chipper meme or something like that? Mm-hmm. But no, this is what I was
good, doesn't it?
This is what I was trying to get to earlier. And I kind of skipped around it, and I should have been more clear and kept my mind focused on this particular subject.
Yeah, Tommy, you've been derailing this entire conversation. We've been so ticking off boxes.
No,
this is one of the most rambling talks I think we've ever had.
But okay, so
what else do you want to cover?
No, so when it comes to the Trump thing, when I was talking about the Libertarian Party like booing him and like, "Oh, we don't want a seat at your table because you're Donald Trump and we disagree with you on, like whatever, 80% of whatever it is." Right? Mm-hmm. Okay. If you take yourself out of that situation to be part of the administration, then who does that leave Donald Trump with? John Bolton. That leaves him with the establishment. And what are the establishment going to do? They're going to keep trying to cover up this bullshit, right? Whenever he says pull the troops out of Syria, they're going to tell him, "Oh, we already pulled those troops out of Syria. Don't worry about it, Mr. President." All the while, those troops were still in Syria, right? They were never moved. And this was something that actually happened during his first administration. If you're taking yourself out of the position to be an influential member of the Donald Trump administration going forward between 2025 and 2029, then all you're doing is leaving him no option but to hire the same people that are always in Washington. If you want to solve these issues, you got to get rid of those people. How do you get rid of those people? You make yourself accessible to his administration and work alongside him.
Mhm.
But as long as you're too freaking principled to say, okay, I might only get 10% of what I want here, but it's 10% more than what we had a year ago, maybe I should take advantage of the situation and put myself in a position where I can work with this man. No, you're leaving him no choice but to continue covering up this shit because he has nobody else to hire for these positions. Stop knocking your own goddamn dick in the dirt, man. You're defeating your
Well,
own
have a
fucking.
long game and have a win scenario that actually is a plausible win scenario. We started talking this conversation talking about podcasting and stuff like that, right? One of my what developed in my
My
process when
dogs think I'm in a fight with somebody. They're trying to bust the door down.
only if you're only fighting with your past self there, Tom. Um, uh, here, so what I started thinking about this about a year ago with the show, and because my desire is to make this a professional thing. This is what I want to do with my life in one way or another, do media, writing, etc. And we're building towards that. And thank you to everybody who's helped support the show. Tommy, you've been a great boon. A lot of people have been helping me along the ways, and I can't express how humble it is, how humbling it is, and how appreciative I am towards it. So, I can sometimes come off as a dick, especially talking about Indian food, but I really want to get that across that I'm eternally grateful for everyone who helps support the show and edges me along. It's yeah, I can't put it into words. So there's that. Um, so what I started thinking about in terms of is a business, I'm chasing to have 100% of 10% of the market rather than have 10% of 100% of the market. And what is this market? Well, you and I and Matt and Buck and a few other of us, we fit into this weird little niche where we are DR, dissonant right-ish, this ish, that ish, but we're orthodox. I'm observing. I still haven't been rebaptized, so I always put that caveat in. But there's this little tiny sphere within the bigger sphere that we're all, I think, becoming more and more prominent voices in. And I don't think we'll ever be mainstream. We're never going to be Tucker Carlson. Maybe Buck. Buck should be huge, and Matt should be huge. You and I we're too old and kicked around, but missing too many teeth. But whatever, right? We bring to the conversation something that isn't no one else is talking about, and we work with each other, whether directly or indirectly. Matt and I talk quite a bit, and he just did a show with Charles Spadell. I think I'm saying that right. And he ended it with something that we've been talking about in terms of the countering of the vengeful son will be the prodigal son. And well, how I see it is in the story of the prodigal son, the son walks away from the father in indignity and pride, thinks he's going to go do his own thing and do it better than anybody else. Finds out that that's not complete, wants to return to the father, but feels ashamed, meets the father on the road. The father embraces him, so the son is redeemed by the father and goes forward. I'm saying that this is kind of our trip, that all of us have walked away from religion at one stage or another, have come back to it, have been in some ways redeemed by the Father, or are in a process of redemption. And this is the modeling that I think is necessary to combat the vengeful son. That the vengeful son is actually the shadow, if we're going to go Jungian terms, is actually the shadow of the prodigal son. And I believe that in this spirit of redemption, what we can do, or we can ask young men to do to combat the resentfulness of the age, is to then turn around and redeem our dads. Because a lot of people, want to hate the boomers. I want to love the boomers. I want to forgive the boomers. I want to forgive my birth father for not being there, for walking away from the family. for being divorced, and I don't even know the intricacies of all that stuff. I don't care, right? It doesn't matter anymore. I haven't talked to him in a long time. He's probably dead, but so there's I don't think there's going to be a coming conversation there, but it doesn't matter to me because it's like I can I've in it, and this is what struck me
It's about
with
the
my daughter.
healing.
Yeah, what struck me with my daughter in the first year, because we had COVID and lockdowns and some of that, and in the first year of her life, and subsequently throughout her life, um, I spent more time with my daughter in the first year of her life than my birth father ever spent with me in like 21 years or my
Mm,
entire life. Let's just put it that way.
mm,
In that sense, I redeemed him, right? By by recognizing what he had done wrong
mm,
and by correcting it in my own life, by making my daughter a very big priority and spending time with her a very big priority. And because I also my grandfather's model, that guy back there. Well, the other thing that hit me too, and I'm sorry, I'll throw this back to you, is that okay, when you have a kid, you're always wondering, oh, am I doing enough, doing not enough? A lot of my time, like my daughter's sitting, they're away for a week, so but a lot of times my daughter's sitting right next to me. She's watching her shows, I'm doing my show work, and yeah, and we're talking, we're spending time, but like a lot of it's just like we're just around each other, you know.
mm.
And there's that inclination to think, oh God, am I screwing up? Like, am I not doing enough? Am I like, should I be interacting with her more? And then it hit me like some of the best memories I have of my grandfather was just being around him. Like he's sitting in his chair reading his newspaper. I'm sitting at his feet reading a book or whatever, playing with my toys. And sometimes we play together or wrestle or do something. And then we just go back, and go have lunch. It was there was no like, you know, standout thing. Like it wasn't like an effort. We go fishing or something like that sometimes. Like, what I'm saying? Like a lot of my best memories of my grandfather, the things that I almost yearn for the most, is just being around him. And so I'm getting emotional. And that I think doing that with my daughter, whether I don't know, maybe it is a bad thing. I don't know, but uh, or I could be doing more. But I know that that's all right. That's good. That she'll always have that sense of me. And I don't know where I was going with this, but um, what do you think of that? Sorry, I think I rambled myself into a. Well, that's just a statement. That's just a thing.
You made me think about something that I heard the other day, and I
Oh yeah,
thought it
redeeming your
was,
father.
yeah, I heard something the other day, and I thought it was very intriguing. Um, Patrick Beck David had Brian Callen, the comedian, on his show,
Mm.
and they were talking about how their fathers weren't around a lot, but they come to the realization that they understood at a particular point in time in their life that it wasn't because their fathers didn't love them or didn't want to be around them. It was because their fathers were out slaying dragons, so they didn't have to slay those dragons. And I thought it was such an interesting point, and it made me think about something my mom had told me a while back. So I'm going to pat myself on the back here for a second. Um,
Shout out to your mom, by the way. She's awesome.
my mom's a badass. My mom is cool as shit. Hey, so I love my mom. She's one of my best friends, always has been. She like we're only like 17 years difference in age. So she
Right.
always says we raised each other. So yeah, like my mom's a total fucking badass. Um, but she said my two youngest kids were over at her house, and whenever their mom and I had gotten a divorce, I was staying at a buddy of mine's house, and they would come over every couple of weeks and visit over there. And I basically was renting the whole upstairs. So I had two bedrooms and a bathroom upstairs that I was renting from him. And so they would stay in one of the bedrooms. I would stay in the other bedroom. And they came over, and I want to say it was either 4th of July or it was New Year's. I can't remember what it was, but everybody was shooting fireworks, all that shit's going on. I was sitting out in the backyard. They were out back with me watching the fireworks. And I want to say, I don't know, they were like 9, 10 years old, maybe, you know. So they were old enough to kind of understand what was going on. And my son the older of the two of them said, "Can we go out front and watch fireworks out front?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So they went out front and they're watching the fireworks out front. And I'm like, y'all are old enough. Y'all can go out there if y'all want to go sit out there for a little bit and watch fireworks from out front, get a different view, and all that. And so I'm sitting out in the backyard and I guess maybe 2 hours went by and I hadn't heard from them. So I went out in the front yard and they weren't there. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm running up and down the street and I'm walking the neighborhood looking for them. I can't find them anywhere.
Worst dad ever moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I come inside and I don't know what made me think of it. I ran upstairs and I looked in the bedroom they were supposed to be sleeping in and they were asleep. They just didn't tell me they had come back. And I woke
I've
I
had
mean, dude, I woke them up like I was about to freaking go full drill sergeant on them. Like I was mad. I was livid. And my son told my mom, he goes, it may not seem like a whole lot, but I remember that moment. And that was the moment I realized how much my dad actually loved me and that everything he's doing was to carve a path for me to do something. He's out there doing something. He's driving that truck. He's doing all that stuff. And I mean, and since then, he's been over the road with me whenever I was driving over the road. They got to experience that lifestyle and see what I was dealing with. But he said it was that moment that I knew how much my dad loved me. And I was like, that is such a cool moment. I would have never even remembered that shit had he not brought it up. And it was just the fact that it made that much of an impact on him. I was like, oh, wow. And you never know where that impact's going to come from. But he realized at that moment that I'm out there slaying those dragons and I'm doing that hard shit so he doesn't have to do that hard shit, right? And that's kind of what you're saying. Like you saw that with your grandfather. Yeah, that time you spent together was always really important, but he was setting an example. He was out there fighting battles so you didn't have to fight those battles.
Well, I think by the time I was born, my grandfather had already kind of fought the battles quite often because when I was born, he was already in his 60s. So I think that was a different model. Like I realized that I'm an interesting case study because um, I'm born Gen X, like a little bit later Gen X, 77. So I was born Gen X, raised by a boomer mom
Oh, you're older
and
than
a
me. I didn't know
boomer.
you were older than me.
Yeah, yeah.
I was born in 79.
I'm just well pickled, sir. And it's catching up. It's
Is
showing.
that is that Ukrainian skin?
Yeah, true. My mom looked very youthful until like I mean, even now she's what 75, and she's still pretty well kept.
Yeah.
Um, but I was so yeah. So my mom's a boomer. I'm a Gen Xer, and but my parental models, both my grandmother and my grandfather,
Mm.
were great generation, great, and maybe a little bit of silent generation in there as well. So, so I'm really kind of my upbringing was very much in crossroads, and I see things, and this is not giving me errors. By the way, I'm just saying like it's particular to me is that or what informs me a lot of times is I see where these things kind of these the differences between my grandparents and their kids and even me and how it's reflected and what aspects of them are being modeled by all of us. Like it was really hit me when my grandfather died.
Mm.
I was 12. I was turning 12.
Mm.
And he was very much the patriarch of the family. And I'm writing about this, about the tyrannical father, because it's an interesting thing about my grandfather is that um, he was raised in a very violent household, where corporal punishment, like his dad famously picked up a electrical wire that was they were putting up electrical wires in the neighborhood and whipped my my grandfather's youngest brother across the back with it, leaving like permanent scars. One of the punishments of their family was if you did wrong, you had to roll up your pant legs above the knee and kneel in the corner on kernels of corn until the
Mm.
kernels of corn would embed themselves in the skin. Um, like sick shit like that, right? Like old school Eastern European
Yeah.
not nice, right? So the fact that my grandfather wasn't like a complete and total fucking crazy person is a miracle upon himself. That's a testament of the will. But my mom would tell me stories of my grandfather would use corporal punishment, like would whip and my mom was a bit headstrong. He broke her tailbone, whipping her with a belt, and but yet the revenants towards my grandfather in the family was massive, to the point where when he died, I remember, and this screwed me up for a long time. And I don't throw shade on my grandmother; she was saying it out of a genuine place. But my grandfather died, and we're all grieving. And my grandmother turned to me and said to me, and I'm 11 years old, and said to me, "You're the man of the family now." And that fucked me up, man, for a long, long time, because it put me in a position of trying to model my grandfather, but not knowing how to, because I hadn't spent enough time with him. I mean, I
Mm.
spent a lot of time with him, but I was 11. Like I wasn't, I'm not 18 or 16 or something like that, where I'm
Yeah.
entering manhood. I'm still very much a boy, going into adolescence, and not knowing how to do that, and now being surrounded by all women who are all grieving and all putting this man as almost an icon within the family, and always feeling like I fell short, and not knowing how to mourn him correctly. That stayed with me until my daughter was born. And we're talking about going back to redemption. I felt redeemed the moment my daughter was born. I felt like I had completed it. That cycle that wasn't completed, that this constant state of failure stopped the moment my daughter was born. It
Mm.
started happening when I got married, uh, and then but really when my daughter was born, there was a lot of things that happened all at once, and one of them was that, and I think this led to my spiritual awakening or encounter, but uh, that moment, I suddenly was like, now I'm standing eye to eye with my grandfather, with the icon of my grandfather. I now
Hmm.
am shoulder to shoulder. Uh, he had three daughters. I have one. He outdid me there, but I'm saying, like, there's a lot of my work deals with the metaphysic, uh, because I think we've extinguished this idea of the material to the point where there's things that happen in men's. I'll just talk about men's lives, in our lives, that I can't explain it to you. Like I can tell you it, and if you're following along, maybe you can attach it to some part of your life, but until you feel it, you don't understand it. The moment, I'll give this other one story. Sorry, um, and this again connected to my daughter. My wife went through a very long labor, had to be induced. Uh, so it was it was during COVID and all these other stressors. The moment my wife and my daughter, so my daughter's born, they move us to the recovery room, uh, and I'm in the recovery room, and I was hit by this instinct that I knew instinctually, because I'm checking my sixes and nines, right? Like I'm like I'm pivoting,
Hmm.
and I can feel it in my body, like my whole body is like, and I realized in that moment that if anyone in the world had walked through the curtain in an aggressive way to my wife or a child, I would take their life. Like, and it's again not something. That sounds based and manly, but I'm like, you have to understand that instinct. I had it again when I was pushing my daughter in a cart, in a stroller, and a car kind of had a lazy stop in front of us, and I was like, I can
Hmm.
overturn that car right now. Like I could get in front of that car and turn it over with my bare hands. Like, and I was ready for it. If it goes one more inch, I'm in front of that car. And these things hit you, and it's not something you can rationally put into context, other than you become a dad, and I think it's a rightful way of being a man or a father. Some things happen. One more thing, Tom, and I'll pass it to you. Uh, I now don't look at young girls sexually anymore. And that's a weird thing. Like I can look at a young girl who's beautiful. I can live in a beach town. So every summer there's a lot of young girls in bikinis, right? And I'm talking young, like I'm not saying like, young. I'm talking like, 20, 30, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they're all beautiful. A lot of them are stunning. And you can look at them as beautiful people, but I don't have lust anymore. because I look at them like I see my daughter, like I
Mm,
see someone's, or is I see someone's daughter,
right. Yeah.
and my position now as as an older man with a child is to protect them. Like if I saw some man being pervy to them, who isn't a young man, even a young man, but you know what I'm saying, like you give allowances to young guys a little bit because they're trying to get someone. I get it, right? But like, but but if some older guy starts creeping out on them, I'm the first one to be in front of that going, no, no, you're not, because we all
Hmm.
know what you're after, and no, you know, it's just weird. It's a weird, and it's not, again, it's not rational. You rationalize it after the fact,
Right.
um, but it's an instinct that takes over that just changes your entire way of seeing the world and reacting to it. And I think that's the folly and the hubris of a lot of this, the WEF and all this stuff. They're treating treating people as if they're cattle, or these things that can be written and just interchangeable. No, you're fucking with like primordial shit, and maybe it takes a long time to get through that civilizational layering to get to
Hmm.
that point, but you're at that point now where people are going to start reacting violently because they're like, nah, this is, where's the line, this is the line. Like, you don't screw with my kid, you don't, there's some things you are not going to fuck with. And I think we're at that precipice now.
Right.
So I
Well,
think it's
all
in the
right,
Trump.
man. Well, I think that's a good place to stop. I mean, we can go in 2 hours, and you know,
Bless you, Tommy.
as record shows, we could go 6 hours, but I don't know if everybody wants to listen to
Well,
that.
I actually have to try to do some other stuff too around the house, but
All right. But hey,
we'll,
plug away, man.
we'll talk after after you press stop recording a little bit. Plug away. Hi, I'm Jason Mironchuk. I'm the host, purveyor of the Two Bit Podcast. You can find us on places like YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iTunes, and many other podcatchers. And also on X. We post shows. We have a show called Meet the Base. So two bit channel, 2-Bit Podcast is the channel name. I have two shows in production right now. One is called Meet the Base. That's on every Thursday between 8 and 9 p.m. roughly. It's a panel show. Tommy will get you on there as well now that your workload's lightened up. It's a panel show. We talk about everything and everything that's in the news, and we try to go in depth and have more context and interesting things than your standard bears. And you might even get a chimp out. I did with Matt Erickson and a few others a few weeks ago. And then we have At the End of the Day, which is a dialogue show. I don't like calling it an interview show, a conversation show, something like that we're just doing now.
Mm-hmm.
Just had David Gronowski and memetic value on last Friday to talk about Trump and the memetic cross. And so, yeah, those come out every Friday. They'll either be live or pre-taped, depending on scheduling. I have got Kryptos, my friend Kryptos, who you should talk to, Tommy. I don't know if you've talked to him yet.
Mm-mm.
We're coming
Never heard
on.
of them.
He's got an interesting theory that we're going to explore. That as soon as they, I don't want to butcher this, but he's got a theory about bringing women in schools was the death of Latin, and that actually the death of stopping teaching kids learning Latin in schools is actually kind of what got us to this place right now, something like
Hmm.
that. So that'll be an interesting conversation. Yeah, that's every Friday, roughly between 6 and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, and then Friend or Fed is a series that I will be picking back up once I, have time and things happen, that align. And there's writing out there and Substacks and things. So, yeah, 2-Bit Podcast. It's pretty easy to find. And I appreciate each and every one of you for supporting the show. Thanks, Tommy, again. I love these, man. I love talking to you, brother. It's always a good time.
Yeah, this is always fun. So I will stop.